Did you know that Charles Darwin was once studying to become a priest? So how did a priest end up deviating from the biblical creation story to then develop the groundbreaking theory of natural selection? This video tells the fascinating story of how a young theology student transformed into one of the most influential scientists in history. Born in 1809 in Shrewsbury, Shropshire, Charles Darwin displayed a deep fascination with the natural world from a young age. He was an avid reader of nature books and spent his free time exploring the fields and woodlands around his home, collecting plants and insects. In 1825, Darwin enrolled in medical school at the University of Edinburgh. There, he witnessed a surgery performed on a child, a traumatic experience. Since surgeries at the time were conducted without anesthetics or antiseptics, making fatalities common, this harrowing event deeply affected Darwin, leading him to abandon his medical studies before completing the course. During his time in Edinburgh, Darwin also sought out lessons in taxidermy from John Edmonstone, a former enslaved man from Guyana. The skills he learned from Edmonstone would prove invaluable in his later career, providing him with the ability to preserve and study various specimens. After his stint in Scotland, Darwin shifted his academic focus and went on to study theology at Cambridge University. Despite his initial pursuit of a religious vocation, his passion for natural history never waned. The development of the theory of evolution by Charles Darwin was a meticulous process grounded in extensive observation and analysis. During his 5-year voyage aboard the HMS Beagle, starting in 1831, Darwin collected a vast array of specimens and detailed notes on the plants, animals, and geology of the regions he visited. His observations of the diverse forms of life, particularly in the Galapagos Islands, were pivotal. He noticed variations among species from different islands, which led him to question the fixed nature of species. Upon his return to England in 1836, Darwin embarked on a thorough analysis of his findings. He was influenced by the ideas of geologist Charles Lyell and economist Thomas Malthus. Lyell's principles of gradual geological change suggested that the Earth was much older than previously thought, allowing ample time for biological evolution. Malthus's writings on population growth and competition for resources inspired Darwin's concept of survival of the fittest. Darwin's theory began to take shape as he posited that species evolve over time through a process of natural selection, where advantageous traits become more common in successive generations. After years of careful study and the accumulation of supporting evidence, Darwin published On the Origin of Species, revolutionizing biological science by providing a comprehensive explanation for the diversity of life on Earth. He rarely spoke of his secret. When he did, Darwin remarked that believing in evolution felt like confessing a murder. This analogy was not far-fetched, as evolution was seen as a tool for seditious atheists opposing Anglican oppression, leading to imprisonment for blasphemy. Darwin was acutely aware of the conservative clerical morality and the potential offense his ideas might cause. Despite his fears, Darwin was immensely wealthy. By the late 1840s, he had £80,000 invested. He owned 2 large farms in Lincolnshire as an absentee landlord, and in the 1850s he invested tens of thousands of pounds in railway shares. In the 1850s, England became more prosperous, and the rise of professionals ushered in a meritocratic system. the changing social composition of science exemplified by the free-thinking biologist Thomas Henry Huxley promised a better reception for Darwin. In 1854, Darwin resolved his final major problem, the divergence of genera into new evolutionary branches. Using an industrial analogy from the Wedgwood factories, he compared nature's competition to the division of labor. Darwin perfected his analogy of natural selection with artificial selection, preparing to present his theory. After discussing this with Huxley in April of 1856, Darwin began writing a triple-volume book, tentatively titled Natural Selection. Darwin hastily began an abstract of natural selection, which evolved into the more accessible On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, published on November 22, 1859. Fearing backlash, he sent self-effacing letters with copies to experts. Despite his fears, the book gained radical dissenters and rising biologists' support. Newspapers focused on human evolution, a topic Darwin had avoided, and Darwin let Huxley, who thrived in public debate, handle this part of the controversy. Huxley vigorously defended Darwin's evolutionary naturalism and increased the influence of professional scientists, securing the Royal Society's Copley Medal for Darwin in 1864. While natural selection initially received little support, by 1866, evolution was acknowledged by British Association platforms, and Darwin's ideas spread throughout Europe. In 1868, the King of Prussia awarded Darwin the Order pour le Mérite, cementing his scientific legacy. Natural selection began influencing societal views. Some believed cooperation strengthened moral bonds in primitive tribes, while social Darwinists argued that modern civilization protected the unfit from natural selection. Francis Galton suggested that traits like drunkenness and genius were inherited, advocating for eugenics to prevent genetic decline. Darwin's work, The Descent of Man and Selection in Relation to Sex, in 1871, further explored these ideas, discussing human origins and civilization's evolution. The first volume addressed human evolution from Old World monkeys, while the second countered critics like the Duke of Argyll, who doubted the evolutionary purpose of traits like hummingbirds' plumage. Darwin argued that female birds selected mates based on their colorful feathers, supported by evidence from his extensive correspondence network. This concept of sexual selection also applied to humans, with varying beauty standards across cultures contributing to human racial diversity. Between 1876 and 1881, Darwin wrote his autobiography, candidly expressing his agnostic beliefs. His final work, The Formation of Vegetable Mold Through the Action of Worms, in 1881, reflected his fascination with nature's gradual transformations. Charles Darwin endured long periods of debilitating illness, leaving him thin and ravaged. After a seizure in March of 1882, he died in April of that same year. Influential figures secured his burial at Westminster Abbey, honoring the scientist who profoundly impacted our understanding of nature.